They run out of money at 82. Why is it so much worse?
Yeah, that is the big question, and it's something that people do really struggle to get their head around, but it's because
we are back in your life, and today I'm going to roast Rentvesting. I've got Jess with me. Jess, this is the first time we've done a podcast together.
I know. You would think we would have done it by now, but no, here we are.
Yeah. I would have thought out of the combination of you, me, Michael, and Michaela, I would spend the most time with you.
Yeah,
so it's
absolutely.
interesting that we haven't done a podcast together
I know,
before.
Very excited to be
here.
Are
you ready to get angry and yell about Rentvesting?
That's how this topic has come about, right? Because we talk about it often at our desks, and it's winding me up how popular this is. I think people don't fully understand the implications of rentvesting, so that's why we want to talk about it.
It's actually pretty funny. We do some episodes and then Jess listens to it and she's like, you just roasted revolving credits, and we tell our clients to get revolving credits. And then it's pretty much the same thing with this rentvesting stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, I think the key thing with all of those things, it always depends on the person and their situation. So that's why we have to delve into it a little bit more and just understand the nuances, because those are important actually.
Before I absolutely roast rentvesting, Jess, what is rentvesting and why is it so popular?
So the idea here is that people, instead of having to fork out for a really beautiful, expensive home in a super desirable location, they rent that home instead and actually have investment properties in other areas that are more affordable for them. So rentvesting, as the name suggests, you are renting a lovely lifestyle home, but you are still investing in property in some capacity.
Why do you think it's getting momentum at the moment?
I think there's probably a lot of, would we call it jealousy or comparison, or feeling like keeping up with the Joneses a little bit? People really want to give the impression that they can afford a certain lifestyle. I think that's something we see a little bit of. And probably also things like school zones, who your social circles are and what they're up to. I think there's a lot of that sort of pressure to keep up and do those things. So yeah, I think that's where it comes from possibly.
I think there's probably also a bit of fatigue of like the current economic state.
True.
So obviously like really high interest rates, being crushed by 7% interest rates on a big mortgage is no fun for anybody. And the other bit is, if you own a home and the value of the home keeps going up, you probably feel better about owning the home than owning it and it keeps going down in value.
Yeah. It's probably a combination of those things. And yeah, I mean, it sounds like we're really bagging on it, but we are going to get into more detail about why sometimes it can make sense for people. So popularity, it's really just the lifestyle focus. Do you think it's been more in the headlines lately as well?
Yeah. I think it's because of those main things around interest costs and house prices. I think when house prices start to turn around, I think this will probably start to go away a bit.
People look for other solutions, don't they, to their problems?
Because the other piece, right, is if you're renting, there's always the concern about the value of the house going up in value and trying to keep up with it. Now, the argument is you have investment properties, so that's keeping up with it. But as soon as you're renting and you're looking at the houses you're around and the house you're living in, and that's going up in value, I think it will change, where people will be like, it's going to cost me too much money to rent versus the capital gain in this house that I want.
I think the other part to this actually, which is something we talk with our clients about often, because we do ask them, is home ownership super important to you, is that some people really like the flexibility. So some people actually don't want to buy a house because it puts them situated in a certain area for presumably a while, whereas renting gives you the flexibility to flit about wherever you like, and especially people who like travel.
Flit about. As it just sounds like so just kind of floating with the wind.
Wishy-washy. Yeah. Make a decision.
Yeah. And when we come to like kind of the conclusion around rentvesting, like there is a bit where like if you're in that season of your life, then that's completely fine. But just you can't stay in that season forever, or you'll be financially crushed.
You keep saying financially crushed.
Yeah. So I think the other bit, Jess, as well, is you might not be able to afford the home that you want in Auckland, or potentially any home in Auckland, but you might be able to get like quite a good rental in another part of the country in the regions with quite an attractive rent that could potentially cover the mortgage costs, and then you can go rent wherever you want to rent.
Yeah, I think people might feel that sense of desperation to get on the property ladder any way that they can, and that is one way that they could do it, right?
I mean, if I was not on the property ladder right now, I would be feeling a bit desperate because of how low house prices are historically and how low interest rates have come down compared to where they were. I would be worried if I wasn't on the property ladder.
Good time to buy, right?
Yep. Okay, so we've talked about the pros and why it's popular. should we get into the numbers? Because we
Yeah.
are numbers people. You
Yes.
can't argue with the projections.
No, that's exactly right. And people really do try.
Oh, there's definitely a story there, Jess, but I don't know if you want to get into it or
I
not.
don't know if that's for on air.
Yeah, no. Okay, so what you'll see come onto the screen is our financial projection software. So for anybody that's done a financial plan with us, you'll see you would have gone through our projections with us, where we are modeling out your situation based off your assumption. Jess's projection software is absolutely fabulous.
Oh, it's one of my favorite. I've told you before, one of my favorite parts is when I open a new Planalytics profile and actually get to, it's like opening a new page.
I was thinking of like opening a new Apple like a phone or something. When you pull it out of the case, you pull back the plastic.
Yes, that is the feeling that I have, which I know is pretty nerdy.
Emma's screaming off camera that we're nerds. But to be fair,
we are.
you're the one that's talking to me about oil prices, okay? So I don't know. So what we've done is we've modeled two scenarios. One where a couple owns a home, pays a mortgage, and has one investment property. The other where they rent and they go and buy a bunch more investment properties. So should we talk through the assumptions, Jess? And then we can talk through the projections.
Sure. So the assumptions are that it's a 34-year-old couple, which, you know, is pretty stock standard for the types of people we see come through. 250K household income. So as a household, the two people together. 100K expenses for a family of 4, let's say. It's pretty stock standard, excluding the cost of a mortgage. They are looking to buy a house for $1.5 million with a mortgage of $900,000. Now, they have an investment property, 800K mortgage with a 5% yield.
Okay, so they're the underlying assumptions, Jess. If we look at the projections, there's two key projection graphs we look at. The first one is their mortgage. So they will pay off their mortgage in 23 years, which gets them to 67, which is...
a little bit of a slog there.
Actually, not 67, 57.
We're numbers people.
Yeah, which gets them to 57. So, you know, a few years before they look to start to retire. The other assumption here is they work until 65 and they sell the investment property at about 60. Then they've got their Kiwi savers available. And by the time they are 100 years old and they are ready to die, they have $2.7 million inflation adjusted. Now, I've done the 2.7 million just because it's really easy to have like a number at the end to make it easy to compare to. Yeah. Obviously, we could have got them to retire earlier or spend more money, which are all very common goals. But just for the sake of this exercise, 2.7 million at 100.
Sounds good.
They're pretty good projections, Jess.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say the main thing that I would slightly alarm me is that they can't make many additional mortgage repayments. They're not really paying their mortgage off much faster than they possibly can, which I think is, again, something where the Rentvesting starts to appeal to people because these mortgages do feel like such a big slog. So, yeah. But, I mean, they're not bad, right? They're comfortable.
It's a very good point. Actually, in this situation, we might potentially discourage them from buying that investment property because with the top-ups, it might be a little bit too tight for them.
Cash flow a bit tight, yeah.
Because you only need a couple of things to go wrong and then it could put quite a bit of pressure on them.
That's right. Exactly.
Okay. So should we talk about the Rentvestor?
Yes. So again, the same 34-year-old couple, the same income, the same expenses. Instead, they are going to rent for $1,300 a week. Now, that's a pretty nice place, right? Like that's...
Yeah, I ChatGPT'd that and was like, if it's a $1.6 million house, which is the example, what's a fair rent for it? And it was like about a 3.5% yield because obviously more expensive houses have worse yields. So I was like, oh yeah, makes sense.
Okay, and this gives them the lifestyle, right? So this still gives them the same lifestyle more or less. I guess the other downside to this, because we used to rent in London, as most people do.
And you used to live in London?
I don't know if I've mentioned it before, but
mention it every day.
You've got the downside of landlords coming along to kick you out potentially every year or whatever it is. So they've got the lifestyle with the slight uncertainty of that. But these guys can afford an investment property quite happily. Again, $800K worth fully mortgaged with a 5% yield.
So what I've done, Jess, is I've gone, okay, so they had a $1.5 million house, $900,000 mortgage, $600,000 of equity. They can utilize that $600K of equity and go buy $2 million of property. So they'd have a $1.4 million pile of debt in addition and still a 5% rental yield. So two properties. Well, it might be more than two properties, but $2.8 million of investment property in total, $2.2 million of debt, 5% rental yield in totality.
If we were to simplify that, basically what you've done is go, how much could they possibly invest in property comfortably.
Thank you for summarizing the numbers nicely.
And work those numbers. Yeah.
Okay. The summary, though, is they are crushed like bugs. So if we look at it, and I will bring up the projection, the first problem is they're going backwards with their cash flow on a year-on-year basis, which we're going to talk about why in a second. And then they are forced to sell these properties at some point because they can't keep up with the cost of their lifestyle. And then by the time even if they sell the properties, by the time they are 82, they are out of money. They're gone. Like, I don't know what they're going to do. Go back to work at 82.
I remember when I first started and asked you about these graphs, I was like, but what happens when that happens? And you're like, the money's gone. There's no more money. And I was like, oh, okay. It literally, I think maybe just for our listeners who haven't seen this before, this graph is representing how much money you have access to at each point throughout your life. So when you see that graph line go down below zero, these people quite literally have no money left. That's what we're looking at.
That's not, and sometimes you go, James, how do I fix it? And we do refer to them as sad plans.
Sad plans.
We're not magicians.
Yeah.
We can only do what we can do. So make sure you have a plan to get ahead with your finances.
Yeah.
So Jess, in the first scenario, they've got $2.7 million at 100 plus the value of the home, which isn't factored into those projections.
Yeah.
In this scenario, they run out of money at 82. Why is it so much worse?
Yeah, that is the big question, and it's something that people do really struggle to get their head around, but it's because rent is projected to go up with capital gain over time. So actually, if you're projected to rent for the entirety of your life, the cost of rent is increasing faster than what you can keep up with. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does. I mean, you just think the cost of rent, any renter who's rented for a long period of time can tell you it's going up, and it's going up faster than inflation. And I think actually another thing that's happening at the moment, which impacts why Rentvesting is popular, is what has happened to the rental market recently. It is soft. Rents have come backwards, which means you can buy cool shit, but not a lot of money.
Yeah.
I think that's another big, but that's not going to stay that way for long term, just like the property market's not going to stay down over the long term. And if you haven't listened to us before, you might be like, these guys just love property, trying to sell us lots of property. We're Switzerland. We love shares. We love, it's really about your ability to achieve your goals. And the reality is, renting long term, the projections just don't stack up.
They do not. And yeah, I think that can come as quite a shock to people. But I think, and we don't want to bash Rentvesting necessarily, because I do think, our opinion, we've talked about this, our opinion is that there are scenarios where it can make sense for a period of time.
Yeah.
So I think if your plan is for a period of time to rentvest for particular reasons, maybe it's the school zones, maybe it's the lifestyle while your kids are a certain age, whatever it is, as long as you have a foothold in property somewhere else and you have a plan to stop rentvesting at some point, then it can work.
Yep.
Would you say?
Yep. No, I agree with that. I think there's probably a couple of other caveats to pop in as well. The first one is we've assumed a 5% rental yield. I know we have a lot of crossover with Ilsa's community as well at Wolf Property, where we're talking about, and your boy loves a multi-unit, loves an 8 or a 10% rental yield. I've run this on an 8% rental yield. It looks obviously better, but it's still just nowhere near
not as
good. The second thing is you obviously have a lack of stability and security as a home. I mean, Jess, when you're talking to people, they are thinking about, they want their kids to be able to go to school in the same place and not have to worry about.
Yeah, it's especially families. That's something we hear a lot is and other things like, I don't want to have to worry when my kids bump into the walls and, all of that stuff that comes with having a family. So stability, but also just taking a little bit of the stress out of knowing that you own the patch of dirt that you live on. Yeah,
for sure. And the other one is, you don't have the same discipline statistically if you are renting. So if you have a mortgage, you have a fixed repayment to the bank. And I don't know if you worked this out with your mortgage, Jess. The bank wants to get paid every fortnight. So you have to have that discipline. But with renting, as long as you pay your rent, you can do whatever the hell you want. There's no principal repayments. You're just paying your interest. You're paying your rent.
And you're saying the difference, you're doing whatever you want with.
Yeah.
As opposed to investing or whatever.
Because we know that if you're not forced to do something, people are pretty crappy with their money on average, right? It's not like a lot of people, and that's the example with the revolving credit, right? People have good intentions when they go and rent, but are they actually saving, or are they just going to Europe or going to Fiji, living their best life?
If rentvesting isn't the perfect solution, can we talk about what is after the break?
Rentvesting is another perfect example of another trend going around in the world. The most important thing is to work out what your goals are, to build a financial plan, to execute. If you want to get a plan in place, reach out to Lighthouse Financial. We can take your situation, build a bespoke plan to get you where you want to get to. Now, back to the episode.
So, James, what are the alternatives? What's the solution to this?
So I think we've just got to, to summarize, you just got to remember that rent is inflationary and you're going to grow at a higher rate than normal inflation. And a mortgage repayment is deflationary. So that mortgage repayment is fixed. Obviously, the interest rate will go up and down over time, but eventually that cost disappears. So you have to think about this long term, not just the short term benefit. But you might do it for a period of time. So the answer is, while you might not necessarily do that at this stage, you have to get onto the property ladder at some point. I think all of the data around retirement and the biggest needle mover for whether you have a comfortable retirement or not is whether you own your own home.
Okay, so we're wanting people to get on the property ladder as soon as they can. I think another component is trying not to get too sucked into the rat race, the lifestyle impression. And, if you can afford a home, and even if it's not your dream suburb to start with, we always say your first home is not your forever home. So I think keeping that front of mind when you're looking at buying your first house is quite important.
Yeah, your first home's just not going to be your forever home.
No. Thanks for reiterating that.
Yeah. Let's just come back to reality. And when I talk to a grad and I'm like, so what house do you want to buy? And they're like, well, I'd like to have a villa because I like some character. And it'd be nice to have 3 bedrooms. And it'd be like to be able to walk to Ponsonby shops.
That's
right.
And
we're just like,
no. Yeah. You start at the bottom and then work your way up. And then once you've paid down some debt, you can leverage equity to get investment property. Do it that way if you can. Make sure you're surrounding yourselves with experts who can help you structure that debt in a way that's really efficient for you. Obviously, we'd recommend planning this out properly rather than just going into it all blind. And I think then you can focus on compounding wealth over time in the way that's correct for you.
Started at the bottom, now we're here.
Yeah, that's all you had in your head the whole time, I could tell.
Yeah. Look, and the whole idea of this episode is I was trying to troll you and trigger you and kind of the rentvestors out there to fire you up. And the reason we've done that is not, like I said, it's great for a season. There are definitely plans we do and people we talk to where we're like, yep, this makes sense for you, but you just can't do it forever. So hopefully you've learned something helpful, because this is what this podcast is all about. And if you want to learn more, there's only one way. You got to subscribe, you got to review, you got to like, and we'll catch you next time.
Thanks so much to Lighthouse for sponsoring this podcast. See you next time.